welcome to the special meeting and work session of the Town Board of the Town of Ossining for August 21st, 2018. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
If she wouldn't come.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would you like to do the?
Sure. Councilwoman Shaw.
Present.
Councilwoman Dottori.
I am here, thank you.
Councilwoman Feldman. Councilman Wilcher.
Present.
And Supervisor Levenberg.
Here I am.
Do we have any announcements this evening?
We do. I just want to first make a quick statement for the audience that we have a few resolutions to approve tonight, and we had originally planned for 2 work session topics to discuss legislation restricting leaf blower use in the unincorporated town, as well as a new solar code. However, unfortunately, we received word late in the afternoon that our planner, David Stolman, was not feeling well and would not be able to join us. Since we are expecting him to guide the board's discussion, we will plan to instead postpone this work session topic until sometime after our public hearing on the subject, which is scheduled for next week, August 28th. And we will have to work out with our planner when he is next available, so I'm not yet sure what that work session date will be. I know many of you have come to discuss this, so I would suggest that you might want to provide comments or attend next week's public hearing. Now on to more general announcements. Ossining has gone through an awful lot over this past week, and many of our residents have had to deal with some unimaginable situations that have turned their world upside down. Once again, I want to extend my sincere thanks to Ossining Police Chief Kevin Sylvester, who did a stellar job at keeping our community informed during each breaking story, along with his exemplary officers. Also, Ossining Fire Department Chief Angelo Minicchio, Ossining Volunteer Ambulance Corps Chief Nick Franzoso, and all of the Ossining Fire Department and OVAC's outstanding volunteers. I also want to thank Village Engineer Paul Fraioli and our Town Building Inspector John Hamilton, who was pinch hitting for the village this week, for keeping their cool heads in the face of some very scary stuff. Ossining is truly fortunate to have you all to call on in times of crisis, and we are lucky to work alongside you each and every day. Due to the prediction and appearance of a massive downpour last Friday's waterfront DJ dance party featuring DJ Catchwan, along with a special Mind Body Spirit Ossining class with Tasia Sabatino of Rebel Yoga Studios, had to be postponed until Friday, September 7th. Please plan to join us on the 7th. It's going to be a great night to end the first week of back to school in Ossining. In the meanwhile, don't miss the last 2 of our scheduled summer concerts in the 2018 series. This Friday, August 24th, join us at the waterfront for Sundad at 7 p.m. Next Friday, August 31st, our concert will begin with Ossining's own Culture Hound at 7 p.m. and we'll wrap up with the Old Mill Singers at 8 p.m. Once again, we would love to thank our sponsors, Westchester Bank, our big sponsor, Greater Hudson Bank, Sterling Bank, Mike Risco Music for sponsoring this wonderful concert series that has allowed us to extend it beyond last year. And also thanks to everyone who has joined us for the series, and thanks to Gyro Uno Food Truck for coming out for almost all of them. And we have had a few weather issues along the way, but otherwise it's been a great summer series, and thank everybody for participating. This Saturday, August 25th, is the Italian Heritage Festival, hosted by the Columbus Lodge, number 692, between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m. Visit Lewis Engel Waterfront Park for food, rides, and raffles with entertainment by Doug Ferroni and Band. Come enjoy this annual community celebration. All are welcome. If the weather doesn't cooperate, not to fear, they have a rain date, Sunday, August 26th, but we heard it's going to be good weather, so we're hoping for Saturday. On Thursday, September 6th, Westchester County will be holding a public hearing on the Shared Services Plan mandated by New York State. Many of our local municipalities in Westchester County have been working with the county to find new innovative ways of sharing services and looking for efficiencies, and we are hoping that public input will help flesh out the county's plan, so please do attend. Next Tuesday, August, and I think that's at White Plains Library, right? Right, I think I'm going to neglected to include that. Next Tuesday, August 28th. Wait. I'm sorry, September 6th is when we're all voting. Tuesday, August 28th, Westchester County is holding their third public hearing on the shared services plan. So please do take the opportunity to weigh in at the White Plains Public Library Auditorium between 3 and 5 p.m. And you can learn about the plan by visiting westchestergov.com/shared services. On Wednesday, August 29th, the Ossining School District will be hosting a welcome party for new families with children entering the school district in Ossining on Everett Avenue near Park School, beginning at 9:30 a.m. There will be lots of local organizations represented to help our new families find their way around, so spread the word and meet some new neighbors. Although a few weeks out, we have a lot of exciting events coming up in September. Don't tell the little ones, but back to school time is almost here. When you're out and about shopping for school supplies, consider picking up some extras for students in our community who could use a boost. The J.W. Cofield Scholarship Ministry, in partnership with Star of Bethlehem Church, will be holding their back to school bash on Saturday, September 1st between noon and 3 p.m. They're looking for backpacks and school supplies. Can you help? Donations can be brought to the church at 304 Spring Street or to IFCA at 138 Spring Street. Save the date for the Down to Earth Farmers Market on September 8th. The annual corn roast is a community favorite and perfect for getting in those last few tastes of the summer season. It is also Climate Action Day, and you can learn how you can help sustain our planet at the Green Ossining table at the Farmers Market. Also that day, the Ossining Matters 5K run 2-mile walk will be a great opportunity for you to take a romp through the village. Check out ossiningmatters.org for some more information about the routes and how to register. I'm crossing my fingers that I'll be running that day, so join me, or you can help give out water. Proceeds go to benefit additional programs and opportunities for students that aren't covered by the annual district budget. And I think that's it for me. Are there any liaison reports? Okay. Are there any additional announcements that I missed? Anybody have announcements that they want to add? I forgot to ask for that before liaison reports. I'm going backwards. No? Are you good? Okay. All right. And then next up, we have departmental reports. And we have in our midst the one, the only, Town Comptroller Thomas Warren to give us an update on how we are doing financially a little past mid-year in the town. We had a wonderful audit. I'm hoping that Tom's going to talk to us a little bit about where we stand with revenue, expenses, as well as our recent ban borrow. Mr. Warren, you have the floor.
Thank you, Supervisor Levenberg and the rest of the town board for inviting me to appear before you tonight. I'm pleased to represent the finance department and very happy that I have a great staff that works for me. Most of all, my deputy Dale Ferreira, and also we have a new accountant this year, Liz Nakari. Very excited about.
Yeah.
She's been here for almost 9 months, maybe 10 months. She's been a great help to us.
As well as Jay and Sharon
And everybody else in the finance
Natalie
department.
Yeah, Peggy. Thanks. I just want to give them all a shout out because they're like, they're all behind the scenes, but they always they do so much
they're all
work for
watching
us.
tonight, so I'll hear about it tomorrow. This is really not too late in the year to have a mid-year budget review. Revenues are oftentimes slow to show up, and expenditures sometimes are slow to show up as well because of the accounts payable process. Certainly payroll is recorded currently. There's a couple of reasons why, this is actually a good time to be reviewing finances. The first is that, as you had mentioned, we recently had a band sale. We had the closing last week. And during August, as we prepare for a band sale, or sometimes we have a bond sale, and a bond sale usually requires a Moody's bond rating. Because we had a ban this year, we did not have to have a bond rating, so that saved considerable amount of money. Not having a rating on this debt, because the rating would not have saved enough in interest rate in order to justify the expense. So the town has a underlying bond rating of AA2, which is considered in the excellent credit category. So that's the basis that the debt was sold on. And I'll go talk about the specific band sale in a minute. Another reason for reviewing town finances year to date at this time is that, as I said, trends are sometimes slow to show up, and it's a good time to reflect on if there's large expenditures that were unanticipated or revenues that weren't materializing in advance of preparing the budget, which is actually the third reason that I listed, so that you have a good idea as to where you stand as you get ready to prepare the budget for 2019. And as you mentioned, we just had a report from O'Connor Davies that appeared before the board that talked about the great financial condition that the town is in, good fund balance levels coupled with very low debt, which is something to be very envious of by other governments. On the bond anticipation note sale this year, the borrowing was just over $2.2 million, which was about $472,000 less than last year's borrowing. There were no new borrowings added to this issuance. It was just a matter of paying down the debt and rolling it over for another year. In addition to the amount that was already budgeted in the 2018 budget, we had to make a decision with regards to part of the debt that was issued for the Old Albany Post Road Dead End project. In addition to that project, the ban also included phases 2 and 3 of the tax revaluation, as well as the LED street lighting project and improvements at Dale Cemetery, and those were approved last year in 2017, as well as some heavy equipment and machinery also approved in 2017, and also we are still carrying forward the ban for the Spray Park recirculation pump. On the Old Albany Post Road Dead End project, which started back in 2013, we actually have 3 different borrowings that have been authorized by the town board, the oldest of which reached a 5-year maximum life that can remain as a bond anticipation note before it has to be either converted to a serial bond or paid off in its entirety. So even though this project has a useful life that's longer than the 5 years, it just wasn't feasible to issue a serial bond at this point for that project. We're still working with FEMA, trying to maximize the FEMA revenues to help pay for this project. And so, we're just in this situation where we were, pleased to have the highway fund balance available to pay this additional $126,000 off. It's a good use of fund balance when you talk about, having a good surplus fund balance, and the town has the fund balance policy. Using that money on one-time, non-recurring expenditures is a good use of fund balance. Also, helping to pay down the debt is also another good use of fund balance. When the bids were opened for the sale of the ban, we received 3 competitive bids, all of which were closely grouped together in ranges of about 2.01% to 2.39%. We accepted the low bid from Jeffries at 2.0079% net interest cost. And as I said, we had the closing last week. With regards to revenues,
Not quite as favorable as last year's borrow.
it's the market rate. Rates come and go. We had a few years that had very, very low rates. Last year's rate was, it was less than 1%. Part of it was promotional from the bank, just trying to show, how much they appreciate the town's business. But I checked the interest rates because they're posted anytime that there's any sales statewide, and 2% is generally what the interest rate is on one-year notes. A lot also depends on the bond rating that a government has. City of Yonkers, paid considerably more on their recent ban because their bond rating isn't as good as the towns here. But 2% is generally what the rates are these days. So, I hate not having free money like we had for a while, or so it seemed, because the rates were less than 1%. It's a competitive rate.
Thank you.
With respect to revenues, there are three large revenues to monitor, and which generally guide the budget side of the or guide the revenue side of the budget: property taxes, mortgage taxes, and sales tax distribution. As I often talk about, the actual property tax revenues won't really be known until 60 days after the end of the fiscal year, when we calculate the availability criteria of unpaid property taxes at that time. So aside from looking at trends year to year, we can also look at trends during the year. And the town tax receiver, Holly Perlowitz, had recently submitted her monthly report for July 2018. This is a critical month when she converts unpaid taxes to tax liens, which begins the foreclosure process on unpaid taxes. And she had mentioned in her report how the amount of unpaid taxes that were converted to liens were less this year than last year in terms of dollars. And right now, the total unpaid tax liens is about $840,000. And then when you add in the current 2018 taxes, right now she's trying to collect $1.2 million, which is, she noted that that was less than the amount last year, $1.283 million. I calculated that difference, which is more than $65,000, and it actually represents a 5% decrease in the amount of unpaid taxes and tax liens. So that's a good sign for the town that the taxes are being collected, and one way or another, the taxes always get paid, even if it means taking the property to auction to sell. The law is available to allow the town to collect the taxes. So this amount is just a question of really cash flow now, because the taxes in these tax liens will eventually be paid, pretty much. The other tax revenues for mortgage tax. There's two payments that are received annually in June and December. The town received its first payment. First I want to talk about that great year we had last year. It was over $1 million in mortgage tax revenues for the year, which, I went back, and it was back in 2008, the last time that mortgage tax revenues were that high. Now it seems that we're back to the level that we had back in 2015 and 16. The payment that we received in June was $279,520, which we're at 51.2% of the budget. So I'm confident that the town's going to receive the second payment that's going to help make the budget. As I said, that's one of the revenues that we monitor. It's great to have a great year sometimes. And the other revenue, sales tax distribution revenues. So far, we've received two of the payments, and this is again why revenues are slow to show up. Here it is August, and just last week is when we received the second quarter 2018 tax revenue. So now, or sales tax revenue. So now we have an opportunity to really see how we're doing this year versus last year. Of the budget of $700,000, we've now received $425,123, which is 60.7% of the budget. and it's actually 7% higher than the amount received for the first 2 quarters in 2017. So it's a good year for sales tax revenues
Fine stuff.
in 2018. And finally, on the expenditure side of the budget, much of the budget is predictable because you budget for the salaries, and the contractual expenses are generally based on what the historical trend has been. Looking at the percentage of the budget that's been expended for the different categories, such as personal services and for contractual expenses, everything is just pretty much consistent year to date this year compared to the budget. And with prior years, there are two large items that I did want to mention, and these were related to the 2 bond resolutions that were adopted last year for the large equipment in the parks and the highway department. And I hope that maybe Maddie might be able to help me out on this. Some of the items were expended last year and into this year because there were open purchase orders that were carried forward into 2018. And sometimes with the large equipment, it takes time for the equipment to be delivered. For the Parks Department, there wasn't quite enough money in the outstanding ban to pay for the entire truck. So right now, the charge in the general fund is an extra $59,841, and for the highway street sweeper, $71,780 above the paid out or the fully expended ban. So our recommendation is for there to be a budget modification to memorialize the decision to use accumulated surplus fund balance to pay for these expenditures, along with what I had talked about previously on that $126,000 used to pay off that first ban for the old Albany Post Road dead end project. And we can present this, for the board's consideration at next week's legislative meeting.
Is that it? Or do you have more?
That's pretty much it. I just wanted to, wrap it up and conclude that,
Okay.
On both the revenue and the expenditure side, and considering the good fund balance situation that the town is in, the town's in great financial shape still at this point as you get ready to work on the 2019 budget.
Okay, so I want to just first thank our budget director, Madeline Zahatch, for doing such a great job, as well as Dale Ferreira, our deputy comptroller, and Tom, yourself, and all your support staff. We're very appreciative of all the work that you do behind the scenes to keep us on track, and for the level-headed planning of our budget director, Maddie. So thank you for that, and I'd like to just open it up to any questions from the board for Mr. Warren. Or comments?
Thank you.
Compliments are good.
Just thank you for making it as short as you did.
Anybody else?
Just thank you for all the work that you do behind the scenes. I know a lot goes on and no one sees it, but we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Nothing from me? Okay. All right, okay, no, you did. You didn't have the microphone, so. Okay. You're missing a microphone tonight. Okay, all right.
You may have this one.
Okay, all right.
Almost got away with it.
All right, anyway,
Thanks,
once again,
Tom.
thank you very much, and hopefully we won't need to see you again. No. No, but we
We'll see
appreciate
you
it.
next week.
Are we gonna see you next?
No, they're going to make the resolutions for us.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah,
Probably
yeah.
not going to visit.
No,
Oh,
we're good.
If requested, it'll be at the
If requested, he
legislative
always
meeting.
does. He always does come very obligingly. Thank you. Okay.
thank you, Tom.
All right, so moving right along, I think we're moving into public comment on agenda items. We're not up to our work session topic. I know many of those in the audience have come to just to hear us discuss leaf blower legislation, since I spoke with you in advance, so unless there's any comments on any of the agenda items or board resolutions. With that, we will move into our board resolutions.
Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining hereby approves the August 7th, 2018 minutes of the special meeting as presented.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Staying.
Okay, thank you very much. Got it in advance.
Resolved that the Town Board hereby approves the voucher detail report dated August 21st, 2018 in the amount of $167,919.27.
Motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Resolved that the Town Supervisor is authorized to sign a memorandum of understanding with Neutron Holdings, Inc., DBA Lime Bike, for the operation of a pop-up business to provide bicycles within the Town of Ossining between September 15th and September 21st, 2018, subject to approval by Town Council as to form.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay. So we're excited to be partnering with the Village of Ossining as well as Green Ossining to celebrate International Car Free Day on September 21st. Through the work of 511 New York Rideshare, we have been working together with the Village and Green Ossining to find innovative solutions to reducing the number of single occupancy vehicles on our roads. Lime Bike, which is a dockless bike share company, has agreed to support a pop-up program in the village and town between September 15th and September 21st. This will be a pilot program, in a sense, to measure interest and see if this is something that could be supported more fully down the line. So right now, we're just looking to have agreement from the board to sign a memorandum of understanding with Neutron Holdings or Lime Bike, where they would drop between 20 and 30 bikes in the town and village, and probably more in the village than the town. And then anybody who signs up for the app would be able to make use of the bicycles through the bike share program. If anybody has any questions, you can go online and check out Lime Bike. I don't actually have, I should have had their website, but I don't have it here, but you can take a look at it. And on Climate Action Day on September 8th, we're hoping to have 2 of their bikes and some other material for people who are interested in signing up for the app in advance of their pop-up, which would launch on September 15th. Basically, they're going to put bikes around, and if you happen to see a bike, you can find it on the app where a bike might be, and if you want to take the bike from point A to point B and then leave the bike, there are restrictions on where you can leave the bike based on the app, and then another person would have an opportunity to pick up a bike at that point and ride it to another location. So are there any questions or any discussion about this?
Just wondering if they're all going to end up at the bottom of the hill.
Yes, they might. And they do, so they do pick them up. They have, they monitor. Lime Bike monitors where the bikes are based on the app. So they know where they are at all times. I don't think this is going to be because it's this 1 week little pop-up, I don't think that there are a huge amount of staff of theirs that's going to be moving the bikes, but the idea is that if all the bikes do end up in one place, that they have their staff move the bikes. So it's going to be a little bit of a test for us to see how it works, and if they do all end up at the, at the bottom. They do also have pedal assist bikes, and we had hoped that we could get some pedal assist bikes, but the issue is that they're not exactly currently legal in the state of New York. So that's a little bit of a problem, even though we really like, because the pedal assist, like you have to pedal. It's not like one of the mopedy kind of bicycles. So you actually have to pedal to make it go, and it has a little low level motor, but it would just help people get up the hill who might be interested in doing that. So hopefully we're working on, supporting, we can collectively work on supporting legislation at the state level to get those pedal assist bikes to be legal. And meanwhile, we know that they are sold and they are used, but it seems a little not right for us to support that.
No.
Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Whereas the town of Ossining owns parkland at 1 Westerly Road, Lewis Engle Park, along the Hudson River. And whereas the Lewis Engle Park Beach provides river access to the community for fishing, kayaking, wading, and other forms of water recreation. And whereas the town is interested in rehabilitating the Lewis Engle Park Beach to provide enhanced river access to the community for other forms of water recreation, including swimming. And whereas improvements to the Lewis Engle Park Beach will employ sustainable shoreline practices as well as universal design to protect the area from storm damage and allow for people of all abilities to enjoy the beach area. And whereas funding is available from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program for planning of Hudson River shoreline access retrofits, including the scope of the desired improvements to the Lewis Engle Park Beach. Now therefore be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining hereby endorses an application being made by the Town Supervisor's Office to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program for planning for the rehabilitation of the Lewis Engle Park Beach.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
Second.
Right. This grant would fund planning the Lewis Engle Park Beach. The scope of the planning efforts include developing a concept plan, survey of conditions, site plan engineering, community outreach, and permit applications to the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation and U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The plan will also address innovative methods for proactively working on beach erosion, hopefully helping the town to avoid the exorbitant costs associated with maintaining a healthy level of beach sand via traditional methods, and also planning for storm surge and sea level rise future conditions. The plan will help match and further clarify the town's community development block grant request for implementing improvements at Lewis Engle Park. We are requesting the maximum grant amount, $50,000, to support the costs of the plan, which preliminarily was estimated to be around $92,000. This estimate was developed by an engineering firm with experience in shoreline projects around the world, but with significant local experience along the Hudson River. This firm has also done work on the Ossining waterfront, assisting with the stormwater management plans and shoreline stabilization at Harbor Square and Henry Gordine Park. If the town does receive the grant, we will obtain more specific estimates and evaluate how we might be able to phase in the project. At the time, we will also explore options for supporting the project through other means besides cash, such as in-kind support. Are there any questions? Discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. In that case,
We have no correspondence to be received in files. We have no monthly reports. Open it up to visitor recognition. Is there anyone here who's come to address the board on any topic?
you can have the floor if you'd like to, or just to hear, to listen, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. In which case, might I have a motion to adjourn into work session?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I said aye. I was just
Aye.
I was saying aye, but I was.
Councilwoman
delaying.
Vittori does not want to go. No, just joking. Okay, so we are going to skip over our conversation, as I mentioned earlier, on solar code and launch into our conversation about the leaf blower local law. And with this, we are really looking to find a balance between community needs and reducing the impact on our neighbors' enjoyment of their space. So reducing noise pollution and also the impact on the environment. Many municipalities in throughout Westchester and beyond have instituted leaf blower bans that are specific to a time of year. Our counsel to the town, Ms. Donna, has put together a really great chart,
Thank
which I'm very happy to take a look at what everybody's doing. And I mean, it literally from if they are restricting all leaf blowers, just gas powered leaf blowers, or gas and electric and diesel, or and what the time of year, prohibition that they have in place, what kind of exceptions they have, limitations when permitted. So in other words, or limitations, I'm trying to remember.
So a lot of them have a period ban from, you know, I think generally what we saw mostly
Right.
was sometime in May to sometime in September. Some varied a little bit. Some, even during the periods where it was permitted, they put restrictions on the use. Virtually all the municipalities, including several that weren't included in the chart, have some sort of time of day, day of week restriction, which is part of what you're considering in your local law. And that doesn't really seem to be something that the town board has had much debate about. But the vast majority of municipalities in Westchester do that. But then there were some that had additional restrictions beyond that. You can only use it for a certain period of time. It couldn't exceed a certain amount of decibels. There were also exceptions or exemptions to the restrictions. So, you know, municipalities handled them in a whole host of different ways. Some did exempt properties of certain sizes, the amount of leaf blowers that could be used at any one time. So there's a whole lot of ways to go about doing this, but I know that the town board was very interested in how other municipalities were doing it because of the interest in balancing the various interests. So,
Was there anyone that stuck out for you that you thought was,
well, one thing that's not in the draft local law now, that came up relatively frequently was emergency exceptions.
Right.
So for certain climate events that may occur, either depending upon who they designate, highway superintendent, DPW, depending upon the municipality, sometimes the supervisor could put an exception, put kind of a stay on any restrictions for a certain period of time, generally, if it's deemed necessary based upon the circumstances. So that may be something that you may want to consider including that doesn't currently exist. A variety I know something that the town board had discussed was exempting municipal uses and municipal properties. A lot of municipalities do that. Golf courses were one that I saw often. School, that's included in municipality, I would think. There were some that incorporate a lot of ones that I saw, not a lot, but multiple, required the use of a muffler to kind of conceal the noise, and that's not in there now. So there was one that talked about if you need to do it because of a medical issue, in which case you basically have to provide a doctor's note, which I thought was interesting. So there's just, there's a whole host of ways to go about doing this. I know the town supervisor had talked about focusing more on gas, and that does seem to be the direction that most municipalities did go in restricting gas. Some did restrict both gas and electric, some didn't make a distinction. Some just had a street ban. It was just one sentence. You can't do it from May to September period. And then some were very detailed and kind of extrapolated a lot of situations, not extrapolated, exempted a lot of situations from that or certain scenarios that could come up. Some talked about complying with EPA's phase 2 emissions standards, which I know, based upon prior discussion and comments that you've received from the public, is a concern that comes with the use of leaf blowers. So that's something you may want to consider as well. But as far as the period of the ban that you have in place, that you've been contemplating, which was May 31st to September 30th, that does seem to be very consistent with what the majority of other municipalities are doing.
I just thought Irvington's was kind of interesting for their exceptions.
The level of detail, right?
Right. Well, also because, for example, they said golf and tennis clubs they exempted golf and tennis clubs that weren't within 100 feet of residence. I just thought that was interesting. I mean, we don't have that issue in unincorporated, so it's not necessarily an issue. And I would think that if we did, I think we should probably include something for the special circumstances for emergencies, and give somebody the authority, possibly town supervisor authority to do that. I'm just thinking because we have I mean, some of our own properties, if we don't exempt ourselves, which I'm still not sure that we would not want to do, in certain circumstances. Again, a lot of these, even when they exempted municipalities, it was specific, right?
Yeah, it wasn't global.
Right.
It was specific. Some did do it with only if you're within a certain distance
More than
away
100
from
feet
residential.
tops, right? So golf course, municipal, and school employees while performing duties more than 100 feet from residence. And I think that that's also interesting. I'm just going to read Irvington's exemptions are for 1 and 2, or exceptions are for 1 and 2 family properties can use one gas-powered leaf blower once a week for 30 minutes between certain times. Multifamily and cluster developments can use gas leaf blower during certain times. Exception expires.
So it's basically a phase-in.
Oh, that was a phase-in.
So
right.
it expires 12/31/18.
Right.
So
So
they
it's the end of
enacted
this
that.
year.
So at the end of this year, they'll no longer have that opportunity.
Right. So basically, that would give multifamily and cluster developments a chance
To
adapt, right? And again, to whether phase out old equipment, phase in electric leaf blowers, that would be more conducive to fine living circumstances.
What they did was actually different than what a lot of municipalities did as well in the time of year prohibition, as you can see, is that they had spring and fall cleanup periods. So instead of saying you can do it any time of year between 10/1 and May 30th, or whatever the dates are that we were talking about, you can only do it within a 3-month period in the spring and a 3-month period in the fall. And then that winter period from, it looks like, December 16th until March 14th, it's prohibited again.
Some people are using it to remove their snow, so I guess they're trying to prevent that.
Right. So, I mean, I guess one of the main things,
Yeah, go ahead.
one of the main things was gas, electric, or both.
I'm a fan of gas, and I don't think the electric ones are that noisy. But maybe electric under, X decibels and X power.
Right. I mean, that was
Yeah.
another thing that I think in Greenberg, leaf blowers in residential zones can't exceed 75 dBA. So then that would take care of.
The loud ones and
the
the
loud
strong
ones,
ones, probably
right.
because they get louder as they get stronger.
Correct.
I'm just, that's. I'm mainly interested in the gas ones for right now.
Does anybody have opinions about this? I know that all of the leaf blowers, gas or electric, are not great for the environment, no matter what, when they're used on the grass. But sometimes people are really using paved areas. So I thought that the 30-minute. I actually thought Irvington was kind of interesting. I don't know if anybody wants to dig into that a little bit more.
The only issue with that, and I'm not sure from their perspective,
Well, it's hard to enforce.
enforcement issue.
Yeah. Again, I mean, a lot of this is, education. I mean, I don't think that, a lot of it is like neighborhood enforcement. It's kind of like the kind of thing where we're not sending around the police to, check on if people complain about it, then, somebody would go to take a look and maybe refresh people's memory of what the regulations and the restrictions are. But it's certainly an education campaign, and one to start raising awareness about the negative impact that certainly gas-powered leaf blowers have on the environment, but also that they have on people's quality of life, because the noise is a deterrent to outdoor enjoyment during the summer, mostly spring and summer months, right? So, I mean, that's for the most part when these restrictions are in place. So,
I'm in favor of keeping it pretty simple, like no gas, or if we decide within limitations of the exemption if there's a storm, I think we should have. And probably we need to let our cemetery use it to get around the headstones. I don't know about anything else.
I know we've heard from the cemetery, and we heard from parks also that, you know, again, if we restrict it to, we could, you know, restrict it to, I don't know, once a week or something like that. I'm just saying, you know, if, as
Or impervious surfaces.
impervious surfaces, not within.
I know cemetery, didn't they needed to get around the gravestones?
Yeah.
Well, the cemetery
I think the cemetery should just be
be exempt.
Right.
exempt because it's too complicated.
And
What
if you
about-
want to do like schools and parks, impervious surfaces only away from residential areas, maybe.
I mean, when I read through some of them are very detailed and very specific. I'm with Liz on let's try and keep it as simple as we can.
Just going, City of Rye it has exceptions for certain uses / properties, including municipal, school, religious, membership clubs, golf courses, hospitals, retirement communities, cemeteries, driveway / road paving.
That's actually
Actually,
the
that's
one
an
that this
important
is
one.
based on.
That's what this is.
So this is that's currently in the draft that was prepared for you way back when.
Right.
So, and that was something that we had talked about, whether the board wanted to keep it that broad.
Actually, the road paving one, there's a real reason to use it. It's one of the only ways you're going to get everything off to seal something. I don't know how you put that as an exemption, you know. Paving
Just like
companies
they do.
only? There you go.
Oh, you just simply.
I don't know that I want to go through that whole list, but I agree with the driveway and road paving.
Anybody? Mr. Walsh.
You know, I was just thinking about it, and near my house, they're working on that bridge there,
Mhm.
and they're using jackhammers, and they starting at 7 o'clock.
They have a noise ordinance in the village, so.
Yeah, and I'm
Right.
getting it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think that, you know,
But I'm just saying, you talking about mufflers and all that. I don't even know if those things come with mufflers. And we talking, you know, we this is a more or less let's wait and see thing gonna happen. Because most of these guys, they're not gonna give up
Well-
all their equipment because somebody says it's loud.
I mean, again, I'm just gonna go through the list of municipalities that already have these in
Well,
place.
I've
So,
been- I've been
so,
looking at 'em.
great.
They do enforce these policies, like in the municipalities. I do know that they're enforcement. So for the landscapers, which I think are the primary people who are targeted, a lot of them are going to electric, even though it is more of a burden, but because the fines and the penalties for some of these things are really stiff. So I think it's enforceable. I think we want to err on being environmentally friendly and neighbor friendly, but you know, practical as well, because there are some reasons that you may need to do it. And you know, if you start listing, you know, 3 or 4, you're going to think of 10 or 12 others. So I guess my concern is how do we, and Christy, this is a question for you, how do we keep it so that we have some latitude for common sense necessities without having to cite every possible thing that could ever happen where you may need a leaf blower and nothing else will do?
Some municipalities allow you to get permits.
Right. Like you can pay $35 for
Right,
a
you
permit.
you apply for a
an-
permit and if it's I mean, I guess there would have to be some sort of guidelines, but that's one way to do it. You know, I mean, it's also, this isn't the end all be all. What you do right now doesn't have to be, you know,
Mhm.
etched in stone for the next 100 years. You can go a year, you can go 2 years, see how it pans out, see what kind of feedback you're getting, what the issues are, and then revisit it. And all you would need to do, you know, we're going through a long process now because we're implementing this for the first time. But once you have something in place, it would be relatively easy procedurally to make amendments based upon the way it's working practically within the town.
And I'm just gonna go through again and list the municipalities: Yonkers, New Rochelle, City of Rye, Bedford, Bronxville, Tuckahoe, Greenberg, Ardsley, Dobbs Ferry, Hastings, Irvington, Tarrytown, Mamaroneck, Larchmont, Mamaroneck Village, Sleepy Hollow, Pelham, and Scarsdale. And many of these have had these bans in place for 10 years, I think, right? These are not, these aren't new. I mean, many of these have had leaf blower bans, outright bans in place, simple ones even. And Yonkers, I mean, we're not talking about small municipalities, we're talking about large municipalities. So we know that they have multiple types of housing, they have multiple types of, all sorts of property, and they've had these leaf blower prohibitions in place. Again, just to reiterate for the public, the prohibition is usually from around end of May or beginning of June through end of September. So during leaf season, you can use leaf blowers. But during the other months, you're really try to restrict it to limited times for emergency use, or if somebody were to get a special permit, if we decide to put that in. And I like the idea of simple and then sort of evaluating how we're doing maybe in after the first season of the ban, and see what kind of feedback we get from
Contractors.
businesses, contractors, residents, etc. And again, if we were to put this in place, it's not going to go into effect until May of next year, so we would have time to do education campaign and reach out to the public to make sure that people were aware of the new ban, what the restrictions were.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I don't know if we're totally, we said we were going to
I've heard what you've been saying.
Okay, okay. So you're going to try to
So we'll simplify
come up with a
just
Simplify,
don't
make
do
it
that.
comprehensive.
Yeah.
yeah, just do everything.
Just do
Short
everything.
for every
Just-
scenario that could possibly come up. Got it.
And obviously, so we'll come up with maybe a draft that we can have a new draft available
For
for
the
public hearing
next
for
week.
next week, and then we can get comments on the new draft. Does that sound good?
Great.
Thank you.
The
Thank
chart
you.
was really, really
Yes.
helpful.
It
Thank
was.
you.
This is
great.
hugely helpful.
Thank you. All right. So with that, I would like to have a motion to go into executive session for contracts, personnel, and advice of counsel.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Just a reminder that we have a number of public hearings that are continuing next week at our August 28th regular meeting, which will take place at 8688 Spring Street. And we look forward to having public input on leaf blower legislation, solar codes, and accessory apartments. Until then, we hope everybody attends all of the wonderful events that are happening around the town and villages. And we're getting ready for back to school, but we'll talk about more about that at our next meeting. And have a wonderful week.